Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Michelle and I garden here in Atlanta, Georgia, which is now officially Zone 8A. And today I am going to be planting fall bulbs. There are so many great videos out there on people planting fall bulbs, so it's really hard not to make content that's redundant to somebody else that has done it before me. So I am going to share with you a couple of things. First off, what's in my box? So let's talk about what I'm going to be planting this year, where it's from, what variety is, all that fun stuff. Then I'm going to show you how I like to plant. I'm a really simple girly. This is a no power planter involved method for planting your bulbs. And then along the way, I'll sprinkle in some of the lessons that I've learned from planting bulbs over the years and how I plant bulbs now and why I do it is because of the mistakes that I've made over the years in the garden. And I mean, that's how life is. So sharing all of those lessons with you so you don't have to make them. Okay, so let's get into what varieties I'm growing this year. So first, let's talk tulips. This was actually a present from somebody that went to Holland. Thank you, Joanna, for getting these for me. And what a thoughtful souvenir. These tulips, I really hope are going to be perennial here for me. I'm actually going to try to plant them in the ground in an attempt to see if they will come back. I personally have not had a lot of luck with tulips perennializing, and I treat them like annuals. And honestly, when it comes to tulips, because I'm not a flower farmer, I am just your normal suburban gardener. What I do now is I will pick up the cheapest tulip bulbs that I can find. A lot of the times the tulips that I will pick up are from Aldi or Lidl. Those are some discount grocers near me that'll carry plant material. I plant them and layer them in my containers and they pop up in spring. They're beautiful. And then they're very easy to yank, toss, and replant with summer annuals. But because these tulips are really special, I'm going to try and give them a chance to naturalize and see what happens. My bulbs this year came from two places. One is a place that I've talked about before for seeds. They are Pine Tree Garden Seeds. It's kind of my go-to place that I order seeds. I will order from them as well as Baker Creek Seed if I want to grow something that's like maybe from another country. Baker's Creek is my go-to for those unique seeds that are from a different country and I'm just curious and I really want to try. And then Pine Tree Garden Seeds is my go-to for all things seeds, garlic, and now I'm trying their bulbs, which I haven't tried before. So from Pine Tree Garden Seeds, I am trying their tulips. I also grabbed daffodils. These are pink charm. I just think these are beautiful. I like them more than the classic bright yellow daffodil. And I've grown these before. They naturalize well for me here. So adding a couple more up front. And then one other thing that I'm trying from Pine Tree Garden Seeds that I've actually already planted is the saffron crocus. I am clearly a newbie at YouTube and I think about filming that earlier. So the saffron crocus is actually a fall blooming crocus. And it is the crocus where the saffron spice comes from. You know the one, the most expensive spice in the world. So I wanted to grow it. I have actually planted it in my veggie beds, interplanted between the strawberries because it requires really well draining soil and I didn't want to take any chances with the clay soil that I have here. So I went ahead and planted those in the veggie garden beds. And the rest of these bulbs are all from Longfield Gardens. Majority of the daffodils that I've planted over the years are all from Longfield Gardens and I normally find them at Costco. This year it was really hard to find cool varieties at Costco, both the fall bulbs and the dahlias in the spring. And so being able to order them and just have them shipped to your door made the disappointment of not finding them in Costco earlier much easier to get over. So every year I tell myself I'm not planting any more daffodils. But then I realized that the daffodils up front are very scarce and I need some more daffodils because, you know, we all need more daffodils, right? So these are British Gamble. They are a peachy white color. I have a thing for peachy white colors, but I'll show you where these are going in just a little bit. And then I also got these Galanthus Icaria snowdrops. Last year was the first year I planted snowdrops and I don't know why I waited so long to plant them. They are adorable. So I wanted to add them to a different section of the garden. Yes, I did. We wanted to add them to a different section of the garden. So got a couple of more snowdrops. And then the new to me thing that I've never planted before and I've Googled a lot about now is the anemone. So this is Mr. Fokker anemone. I'm just gonna pronounce it that way so that I don't get flagged as something inappropriate. So this anemone has a really vivid, almost electric blue color or dark, dark purple. And I love that color in the garden, so I wanted to try this. I've never planted an anemone before, so take anything I say about planting anemones with a grain of salt because I have zero experience. I don't know if these will come back, but it's always fun to experiment in the garden, so why not? I also picked up some Pickwick crocus. These crocus seem to bloom a little bit larger, or at least that's what I think they do. I am going to incorporate these and do a small strip of bulb lawn with these. So I will try my hand at squirreling away a couple of these bulbs into a lawn and kind of see what pops out. It looks very whimsical. I don't know if it's practical in the South because I think we have to start mowing our lawn before this foliage really dies back and the bulbs go dormant. So I'm not sure if it will perennialize, but it's worth an experiment. And then later on, I can tell you, yes, it's good for the South, or no, I'm sorry, you have to be kind of in England to make that look happen. Lastly, I'm planting a few giant alliums. These are gladiator. Planted them in the past and I treat them as annuals now. I have not had good luck with these types of alliums coming back in my garden. The perennial type alliums like Millennium allium, those are the ones that'll come back for me. Obviously, they're much smaller and they don't give this Willy Wonka type really spectacular look, but they are reliable perennials. So if you are looking for perennial alliums, these are not the ones to plant. But if you want that really spectacular Whoville almost look, these are the ones that you want. But note, they might not come back for you. I'm gonna get these all back into my box and now we're gonna go get planting. Today is the perfect day to plant fall bulbs. It's a nice chilly day. Also, it rained yesterday. We got about an inch of rain here in Atlanta in one day. So it's going to be nice and easy to plant bulbs today because the ground is going to be much softer. If you follow some northern garden accounts, you might have seen that they planted their bulbs much earlier, which makes a lot of sense. Here in the South, we plant bulbs a little bit later because it's still warm. So our ground here stays warmer for a lot longer than our northern garden friends. And so when you put the bulbs in the ground, you still want them to be dormant for a little bit. We don't want them waking up prematurely and then getting zapped by a really hard frost because it will be winter. And so that's why here in the South, I sometimes even plant bulbs into January. I'm planting them now because the overnight temperatures are regularly in the 50s. So I think it'll be good, but really it's always a game of weather roulette that you're playing. I can't predict the future, you can't predict the future, but even if you plant your daffodils now, they come up, they get zapped, they'll still be okay. So it's not like a life and death game of roulette that you're playing.
Okay, now it's definitely time to go get things prepped for planting.
So before I start, I'm gonna get these into some water to soak. You don't have to pre-soak anemones according to the internet, but it gets them off to their best start. Since I have never done this before, I am using all of the tips to get things off to their best start. So off these go for a soak. Okay, I've got all of my stuff, and earlier we talked about kind of when to plant bulbs and the right time to plant bulbs in maybe the South and how that's different from the North. But what we haven't talked about really briefly is like a bulb planting 101. And I'm gonna make this really short because I'm going to assume that you've planted things before, so I'm not gonna go in depth, but I don't wanna leave something out in case you are a newer gardener, so let's do a little bulb 101. Bulbs are kind of like seeds. They come in all different shapes and sizes, and there's a certain way that they prefer to be planted in order to grow and produce the flower. Also, both bulbs and seeds in this little package have enough energy stored in them to grow up and produce those first set of leaves that will then start creating photosynthesis, feeding the plant to create those beautiful blooms that we all want in our gardens. Another thing that bulbs and seeds both have in common is that the packet actually has all of the information that you could possibly want to know about planting these and getting them off to the best start. They even have QR codes these days that'll take you to a more detailed website. But what I know about people in general is that we are really busy and we are always looking for the quickest answer. So I'm gonna walk through really quickly how to know which way to plant your bulb and at what depth. These are general rules that will apply to bulbs that are both very large and very small. If your bulb has a pointy side always goes up. You can plant it upside down, but what the bulb is going to be doing is using a lot of its energy to try to grow and get to the sun. That's its ultimate goal. Some bulbs do not have a pointy side. You can see this allium, no pointy side, but what you do see are these roots. Anytime that you see dried roots, that's your sign that the root goes down. So if you have a pointy side, that goes up. The roots down here, these are going down. If you don't have a pointy side and you just have roots, the roots go down. Also, if you're confused, the easiest thing to do is look at the packet, do a quick Google search, and then get them in the ground. In terms of depth, the way that I think about it is the same way that I think about seeds. You are going to want to plant this about 2 to 3 times as deep as this is tall. But if you want to eyeball it, basically I will take the height of the bulb and I will plant it at double that. So one mistake that I made when I first started planting them is that I read that these bulbs need to be planted 6 inches deep. So what I would do is I would take the daffodil bulb and I would dig a 11-inch hole because I thought that I needed to bury this 6 inches under the ground, and that's not true at all. What you need to do is bury this about twice the height that it is, and that's it. Your smallest bulbs are going to be the easiest ones to plant, and your larger bulbs are just going to be a little bit more effort, but they're definitely not 11 inches deep or anything like that. They're about double their height. But my disclaimer is, for proper planting instructions, always look at what your package says. This is just an eyeball kind of method. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get planting. So I'm standing here in my front garden bed. This is one of the newest garden beds that I created just last year. I like to create garden beds in stages where I'm first putting in the trees and the shrubs, then I'm adding in the perennials, and the last thing that I like to add in are the bulbs. For a few reasons, mostly because I use the sheet mulching method to create new beds, so I'm not having to dig up all of this sod. And when I'm creating these beds in the fall and using cardboard, the cardboard takes a little while to break down, which means I don't really have the space for bulbs until that cardboard breaks down, but also because it gives me a chance to kind of sit with the garden space and look at it throughout the changing seasons and see where the gaps are, see what months I'm missing and wishing I had blooms in, and then plan accordingly for that. So this garden space right here is primarily filled with blooms like peonies, roses, and hydrangeas. These are flowers that are going to come up later into the spring and summer. And so what it's really missing for me anyways is that early spring bloom. I want to see some color in here as early as I can get them, which you get with daffodils. So let me show you how I quickly add in some daffodils, which will bring in some early spring color into this bed. I wanted to share a funny story. Actually, one of the first things we ever planted here in this home were daffodils, and the first time that I ever planted them, I wanted them to line a bed. And so what I did was I dug a straight trench and then I lined up my daffodil bulbs and then I planted them that way, and what came out was a very straight row of daffodils that you might expect to see at like a flower farmer kind of operation, but definitely wasn't very natural or beautiful in a garden space. So I've learned my lesson since then, and I'll show you kind of how I like to plant daffodils now so that you don't get that really stiff structure. Unless that's what you're going for, then go for it. But here's how I try to make the daffodil planting seem a little bit more natural. So now what I try to do, if I'm going for a straight line, is kind of just toss the daffodils into that area so that you get some variation and it's not all just in one row. Is it going to be perfect spacing? No, but that's exactly what you would get in nature, and I feel like it just makes for a more interesting drift that way.
When I say toss the daffodils in, I literally just kind of throw them about. I want a general drift, so I'm not, chucking them across the lawn or anything, but wherever they fall, that's where they're going to be planted, and it works out. Now that the daffodils have been scattered, it is time to plant them where they fell. I just plant with a hand trowel. Nothing fancy, no power planter, I swear it works. I imagine that this is how squirrels feel, so really I'm just moving the mulch, getting down to the soil. To plant the daffodil, all I'm doing is I shove the trowel all the way in. This is about 7 inches or so. And then I rock the trowel back and forth so that I'm making a little shaft that then I can deposit the daffodil in. replace the soil like nothing ever happened, and move on and do this a million more times until we're done. And here it is one more time at twice the speed because of the magic of video editing. Oh man, I wish I could plant this fast. But really, it doesn't take too long. It's just getting out there and doing it is the hard part for me. And now that all the daffodils have been planted, it is time to move on to the alliums. Alliums I always try to plant behind something because by the time they bloom, their foliage is absolutely horrendous. It's yellowing, it's dying back. So planting alliums behind something that could hide that is always a good idea. As I was laying alliums, I noticed something that I wanted to share with you. This allium will not be planted, it will be tossed. If you see diseases on your bulbs, it's better to just get rid of them. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it would spread. I prefer to toss things when they look like this. I plant alliums the exact same way I plant daffodils, so I'm fast forwarding through all of this, including the drift of British Gamble daffodils that I tossed behind the roses. My thought is that the roses will be just waking up, breaking their dormancy by the time these daffodils are blooming, but really you never know until you plant it, so we'll have to see how this combo plays out. I will absolutely keep you updated in the spring. And then I took all of these artsy-fartsy aerial shots because this was where I was going to create that little bulb lawn crocus planting. But when I first started digging, I quickly realized that there was no way I wanted to plant 25 crocuses under these conditions. It was way too hard to cut through the zoysia. This is not where they will be going. Okay, I'm not going to be able to dig in 25 crocuses like that. That was too hard on the zoysia. Let me see if I have any better luck on the Bermuda. This patch of Bermuda here is actually under the shade of a dogwood canopy, so it's not super full and lush, and it made it so much easier to dig it in. Things that I've learned from trying to dig in these crocus is that you kind of treat your lawn like you're opening up a pita bread. So you're going in there at like a 45-degree angle, trying to lift up a flap and then just tuck in the crocus, then place your grass back. I found this much easier than trying to dig in vertically and sneak the crocus in that way. It definitely left a lot of patches. I will let you know how this works out and if I have to mow this patch of lawn before the crocus go dormant. All of that will definitely be in an update video coming to YouTube in 2024. Okay, the last thing I need to do is plant these anemones that have been soaking for a few hours. And I've watched a number of videos on how to plant anemones. Some say pointy side up, some say pointy side down. Some people say it doesn't matter, they will find their way up. I'm gonna go with it doesn't matter, they're gonna find their way up because I have no idea which side is pointy and which side is not. So we're going to lay these horizontally so that they find their way up to the surface. And these only have to be planted about an inch deep, which is perfect because my hands are really getting tired of digging. So just a little bit more digging and I will be all done. Also, I want to take a tiny moment to shout out sheet mulching. Look how much nicer the soil is here than it is in other parts of my garden. This bed was sheet mulched and created last fall. And really with the anemone, I'm just kind of roughing up the surface, getting them in there and then covering them with about an inch of soil. It's kind of like planting a big seed. I said this earlier in the video, but in case you skipped ahead, I wanted to reiterate it. Anything that I say about anemones, definitely take this with a grain of salt. This is my experiment corm. It's technically not a bulb, it's a corm that I'm planting this year. I always like to try to plant new things and see how they do. So take all of this with a grain of salt. This is me just showing what I'm doing in the garden. I haven't planted these before. I've YouTubed it, but you know, I'll speak on more authority on this next season when I see how these did and try to troubleshoot if they didn't work out.
Okay, so we planted anemone, crocus, and daffodils together. Tulips are planted the same way as daffodils. I am really cold, and so I want to get back inside. So I want to wrap this video up and let you know that if you live in the South, it is not too late to plant your fall bulbs. If you haven't planted fall bulbs, or if you see them at the store on clearance and you want to get them in the ground, I have planted them all the way as late as January, and they did perfectly fine in my garden. So definitely want to encourage you to plant fall bulbs if you haven't planted fall bulbs. Unfortunately, I can't work my YouTube magic magic and fast forward into next year to show you the beautiful display. When you plant fall bulbs, the before and after looks the exact same way. And so we have to exercise our patience and wait for the show in spring, but it is so worth it. Anyways, I want to say thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for supporting me here on YouTube, and I will see you in the next video.